Welcome to Stars X. Some bands play music, others ignite movements. Nirvana was one of those rare few that didn't just play grunge, they were grunge. In the late 80s and early 90s, an underground movement was bubbling beneath the surface, raw and defiant, waiting for a spark. Nirvana was that spark.
What and who is Nirvana?
Nirvana's three guys from Puget Sound area, Olympia, Bainbridge Island, and Tacoma. Nirvana is a 7-letter word, and Nirvana is a concept.
Nirvana is a 3-piece underground alternative grunge rock band from Seattle, Washington, or the outskirts of Seattle, Washington, and that's about it. I mean, that's what we are.
Nirvana are 3 people, me and my 2 friends, Kurt and Krist, and Nirvana, well, I'll give you the meaning. It's kind of like, it's like the freedom from like all pain and desire, you know, just a perfect place between peace in your mind, I guess.
From a small town in Washington to global superstardom, this is the story of 3 misfits who changed music forever. How they rose, how they fell, and how their legacy refuses to fade. Before the sold-out stadiums, before the anthems that defined a generation, before the tragedy, there was a quiet, gray town. Aberdeen, Washington. A place known more for its lumber mills than its music scene. It was here that a young, restless Kurt Cobain and an equally passionate Krist Novoselic found solace in music, bonding over their love for punk rock. Kurt Cobain was a poet at heart, even if he never meant to be. With a troubled childhood and a deep well of emotions, he found his escape in music. Influenced by punk, metal, and the raw storytelling of the Beatles, he began crafting lyrics that were as brutally honest as they were poetic. Nirvana wasn't just a band to him, it was an extension of his soul. His songs spoke for the unheard, the misunderstood, the ones who never fit in. And in doing so, he became their voice.
What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out or wants to have a musical career?
Just keep practicing and don't give up. Just never give up. Play as often as you can and be really dedicated and try to write good music and don't worry about the material ethics that go with music. It doesn't matter what you look like or anything. It doesn't matter what your product looks like. It's what it sounds
Voice.
like.
Krist Novoselic. If Kurt was the fire, Krist was the anchor. A towering presence both physically and musically, Krist's bass lines gave Nirvana its deep, sludgy sound. He had a sharp wit, a laid-back demeanor, and an unwavering loyalty to his bandmates. When he and Kurt started making music together, it was clear they had something special, a raw chemistry that couldn't be manufactured.
Which would you say you guys have most in common with hard rock or punk? Or I mean, the songs are certainly, you know, melodic as well. Would you say it's all 3 or?
Well, if we have in common is 2 guitars and a drum set, you know.
Yeah.
Distorted guitar.
I think everyone has one of the main things in common is just the punk thing, you know.
We're white boy guitar-oriented rock. Nothing new. I mean, we have something in common with anything or any band that has electric guitars in their hands. You know?
Dave Grohl Nirvana cycled through several drummers, but when Dave Grohl joined in 1990, it was like finding the missing puzzle piece. With an explosive drumming style and an undeniable stage presence, he gave Nirvana the driving force it needed. He wasn't just a drummer, he was a force of nature, a musician who would later carve his own legendary path in rock history.
They were a funny band, you know. I think they hadn't really found the right drummer yet. As catchy and memorable and simple as possible.
Did he allow you any feedback in the writing process? I mean, here you are, a great songwriter.
We wouldn't even talk about it. We would just go in the room and he'd start playing something and we'd just play along and then it would become a song. But he was in a band with Lennon and McCartney. And I was in a band with Kurt. So it's that famous joke, like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he got kicked out? I got a song I think we should play.
Yeah, right.
You know, you can't. And I was perfectly happy because I was like disco drumming. I was just going doosh, dash, doosh, doosh, dash.
Before they became the voice of a generation, Nirvana was just another struggling band trying to get by. Their debut album, Bleach, was recorded on a shoestring budget at Jack Endino's studio in Seattle. Dark, heavy, and drenched in distortion, it was an unpolished gem that captured their raw energy. Then came the album that changed everything. Nevermind wasn't just a record, it was a revolution. The moment Smells Like Teen Spirit hit the airwaves, everything shifted. The underground was suddenly mainstream. Grunge wasn't just a sound anymore, it was a movement. And at its center stood Nirvana, whether they wanted to be there or not. Fame was never the goal. The more the industry tried to polish them, the more they resisted. In Utero was their answer, a raw, unfiltered album that refused to play by the rules. It was both a commercial success and a rejection of commercialism itself, proving that Nirvana would never be molded into something they weren't. But behind the success was a man who was deeply troubled. Fame, addiction, and personal demons weighed heavily on Kurt. He never wanted to be a rock star. He wanted to make music. And on April 5, 1994, the world lost him forever. The headlines were everywhere. Fans gathered in grief. A generation felt like they had lost their leader.
Body, but they have not released a name pending notification of next of kin. Now, to bring you up to date, apparently an electrician was inside the Kurt Cobain home this morning at approximately 8:30 when that electrician discovered the body of a white male, apparently in his late 20s. The man had been shot to death, apparently a self-inflicted wound from a gunshot. Police found a one-page suicide note next to the body, also some form of ID.
I have to explain it to my kids, who love Nirvana. Because for the longest time, I would try to process and talk about it with friends and family and things like that. And they would help me. But now, I feel like I have to help my kids.
We were at our best when we were playing. We like to rehearse, we like to make songs and play together. And I have dreams about Kurt, and I'm so happy to see him when in a dream, like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And then we're always like, well, okay, let's go play. We're always gonna go play music.
Nirvana was more than a band. They were a moment in time, a revolution, a voice for the misfits and the broken. Their music continues to inspire, their lyrics still resonate, and their impact on rock is undeniable. Krist Novoselic continues to be involved in music, dabbling in various projects while also focusing on activism and social causes. Dave Grohl took his love for music and built a new legacy with Foo Fighters, proving that Nirvana's spirit never truly died. Nirvana wasn't just a band. They were a feeling, a cry of defiance, a revolution wrapped in distortion and angst. And as long as there are kids picking up guitars, searching for something real, something raw, Nirvana will never fade away. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.